Hi everyone, I am Rebecca from ChemKnits, and let's hand paint some Knit Picks Galileo yarn with some Jacquard Acid dyes. Galileo is a 50% merino, 50% viscose from bamboo yarn. And I've only dyed this once before, but it took up food coloring beautifully. And the shimmer from the bamboo sort of almost made it feel iridescent. So I am really curious to see what it'll look like if we hand paint it with some of these Jacquard Acid dyes. I am pre-soaking the yarn in some water with 2 tablespoons of white vinegar for at least 20 minutes. Today we are going to mix up 4 different colors using some 1% Jacquard Stock solutions. So we are going to start with a 1/3 of a cup of fire red, rinsing off my measuring cup in between. We are going to do 1/3 of a cup of pink, then we're going to do approximately half of the cup of pink. And then finally, we are going to use some of this sun yellow. And in 1 cup, add about half of the cupful of the yellow. Rinse out my measuring cup. And then 1/3 of a cup of the sun yellow 1% stock solution. So what we have here is total is approximately 1 1/3 cup of dye, and these were all started off as 1% stock solutions. And this is the palette that we are going to use for our yarn. I haven't entirely decided on the pattern that I'm going to use today for doing the hand painting, but I think that we can have some fun with it. I am applying the dye to the yarn using a large basting syringe that you can see here. My work surface is covered with some plastic wrap, so that way we can wrap up the yarn when I'm done applying the dye, so we can set the color with on the stovetop in a steamer basket. And I am going back through and making sure that we have color on the wrong side as well. Now the sun yellow is sort of the bane of my existence, mainly because it does not stay in solution well, and therefore it just causes me problems. Ooh, that's a nice orange. I decided to mix the pink with the yellow approximately 1-to-1 to get an orange, because when I tried mixing an orange with the red and yellow, we ended up getting we ended up with some, when I tried mixing the red and the yellow, the red is way more potent. So we needed a lot more of it. Let's do sort of a stripe down there. I know I will probably need to flip this and add some color to the other side, but I'm really enjoying this orange that I created with the pink and the yellow. I think that it is pretty nice. And I know some of these colors, there's a lot of water in here, so these colors will blend together a bit. But I wanted to do something slightly different from just a straight gradient today. Now what should we expect from this yarn? The viscose from bamboo really should not take very much color. We would expect for the viscose from bamboo to sort of remain solid. But it did seem to take some staining when I did this before, because I didn't see something that looked sort of heathered from this. I ended up, the resulting colors felt, you know, like, as I mentioned before, sort of iridescent. So it felt like that there was some color in those fibers, but maybe the overall product was a bit paler than it would have been if, say, we had used 100% wool. But I have not been rinsing out my syringe in between yet. You can see, yep, that is just how bright that red is. I might, when I flip this over, I will probably need to rinse out the syringe in between colors. But I think that this is sort of a fun little colorway that I've got going on here. On the Jacquard site, they list this fire red as a cool red. And I think that that description is fair, because it is, it's not a purple at all, but you can see when you read the description of it being a cool red, you can see how that makes sense. Okay. For our first pass, this is not bad. I am wiping up some of the excess dye before I flip it, because I do not want to cause too many problems, but you can see why I have the need to flip it right now. And hopefully in doing that, see, I'm wiping my hands right now because that red, there, but hopefully I didn't get any colors into some sections where they weren't wanted. You can try to get color all the way through with your hand painting without using, without flipping the yarn like I'm doing, but I figured that this was a nice and easy way to go about it. But the more liquid you squeeze out from your pre-soak, the more you will be able, the more dye you will be able to apply to the yarn. But I wasn't thinking of too much about how far these colors would be able to go, and so that's why I stayed sort of on the lighter end of things. But I'm going to try to, when I wrap this up, not move it too much. Okay. Silver orange. It's not too surprising that the orange would go first because I had the smallest volume of that overall, so I'm going to make a little more using some of the yellow and our pink. Okay. There we go. Now the nice thing with these other colors is that if I end up needing more, I can go into the stock solutions. And yes, I'm aware that I'm using a fairly sloppy approach today, but my goal is to just sort of have some fun and add some color. But I think that's pretty good for adding these colors in. If I squish it too much, then we could see some more of these colors blending. But if you look towards the interior of these colors, like the yellow and stuff, we are getting really nice penetration. But when you see visible white patches, you can sort of tap, tap, and take care of that. Okay. Now, I am wiping up excess dye that has come out, but I do want to be careful because, you know, I don't want to squish the yarn as I am wrapping it up. But I have my steam pot ready to go, so that way I can wrap this up and then quickly add it to the pot so we can set the color. This is a little more plastic wrap than normally I might use for this type of project, but I had protected my work surface for a number of different dyeing projects today, so it made some sense. Okay. Now we're wrapped up into the steamer basket. And now we are going to steam our yarn for 20 minutes to set the color. It has been 20 minutes and our yarn has been sufficiently steamed. It is all very hot to touch. I've turned off the heat and I'm going to let it cool off so that way we can unwrap and wash the yarn. We do have some bleeding that came through our pot, probably because there was so much liquid in our jelly roll to begin with. Let's unwrap our yarn and get ready to start rinsing. Now, I'm expecting there to be some bleeding because this sun yellow is sort of the bane of my existence. But yeah, and actually there'll be a tiny bit right away just because there is some dye that is left in our plastic wrap. So I'm going to rinse that out pretty quickly. Okay, but right now the yarn has some gorgeous colors. Now, I've found with blends, sometimes they can be super bright when you first add the yarn, but then they end up looking much paler after they've dried. So the real question and curiosity of this yarn will be how vibrant is it once it has dried? And I'm rinsing in warm water right now to help dislodge some of this excess dye that I know is in here. Yeah, you can see that we're seeing some bleeding, a not tiny amount of bleeding, but I do know that, you know, the yellow is not always in solution and that contributes some. And, well, I was using warm water, which with any acid dyes you can get some bleeding with warm water. So now I'm reducing it in heat a bit. But once the bleeding starts to slow down, and we're actually getting bleeding from both sides, interestingly. This is not something that we see with the acid dyes all the time, so it is interesting. But once the bleeding slows down, we will add some clear dish soap to help dislodge some of the extra dye. But we're slowing down. Okay, I'll come back after a few more rinses before we add the soap. I am going to add some clear dish soap to this. There's still bleeding going on, but maybe the soap will help get this extra yellow out. The thing is that, like, the colors aren't looking any less bright as I am doing this. It's just we're seeing some of the colors bleed. Although I guess I haven't used a ton. The red, I did another yarn with the red today and used a lot of it, and that did not bleed at all. So maybe it's in part that we are 50% rayon here, and so, you know, and the dyes are not sticking to that. And maybe it's just part, who knows. I feel like, actually, I guess I haven't hand painted with this fiber type before. So maybe that's part of it. But nevertheless, I am going to keep rinsing. And hey, that's not looking as bad. There's still a little bit of bleeding, but I feel like we're finally starting to see some improvement in the amount of color. So I think I'll probably do another soap round, keep rinsing until I can get it pretty clear, and then we will hang this yarn up to dry and see what the final colors look like. But as I said, I am expecting the colors to get a lot paler as it dries, which is sort of what we see with some of our wool acrylic blends when they look almost very, very closely as vibrant to 100% wool while still wet, but then once they've dried, they look vastly different. So it's not that the color's rinsing out, it's that the colors can be less visible because of the undyed fibers in the yarn. I have to say, I love Galileo. This yarn is 50% merino, 50% viscose bamboo, and it has the most lovely shine to it. Let's see if I move it, if you can get a sense of the shimmer on the yarn. If I were to try dyeing this exact colorway on 100% wool, the colors would be brighter. Nevertheless, this yarn absorbed an awfully lot of color for only being 50% wool. It's a little hard for me to zoom in on this fiber because since it picks up the light with the shine, it's easy to mistake some of these highlights for some of the viscose fibers that took up a little less color. But if you look really closely, you might be able to see a tiny bit of this subtle heathered effect in the yarn. In the past, I described hand-dyed Galileo as being almost iridescent, and I think it's because the viscose is what gives the yarn its shine, and also it takes up less color. So if anything, it might be a tiny bit stained versus being pure white. And so this shimmer and the difference in the fibers and the way they take up color makes the yarn almost feel iridescent. Hand painting this yarn with acid dyes was a lot of fun, and I think that we created a really fun colorway that will give us these mixtures of yellows, oranges, and pinks. The yarn has such a silky, soft feeling that I know that this is going to turn into something wonderful. I am Rebecca from ChemKnits, and I hope that you enjoyed this episode of Dyepot Weekly. If you enjoyed the video, please subscribe to the ChemKnits Tutorials YouTube channel. And if you want to support ChemKnits on a more personal level, check out the ChemKnits Patreon. There are a lot of special perks for ChemKnits patrons, and you really should check it out. There is a link to the Patreon in the video description. Thank you so much for watching.